Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But first, this is your final week to vote for the CBC Awards. So please go to the cbcawards.org, link in the description below, and vote for any deserving YouTuber that you think is deserving of said awards. We at Pop Culture Philosophers have been nominated for 6 awards: Favorite Channel, Best Collaboration, Best Ongoing Series, Best Comic Book Review, Best Beard, as well as Comic Book Community Channel of the Year. I would appreciate it if you voted for us, but vote however your heart so inclines. You have until Saturday when the voting ends, and then the winners are announced at the award ceremony in December. All right, moving on. We always start with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week: Fishflies, issue number 3 from Image Comics and creator Jeff Lemire. This is written and illustrated by Jeff Lemire. It's about this dude. First of all, it's about this town that every so often, I think like annually, like once a year, something like that, these swarms of fish flies show up. Well, during one of these incursions, a dude happens to be holding up a gas station, a convenience store. A kid gets in the way. He shoots the kid. The kid's in a coma, near death. The dude runs away, but something has happened, and he's been covered by these fish flies, and now he's turned into a giant fish fly. So he's turned into a giant fly monster. He's hiding out in a barn behind a house that belongs to this dude who's kind of like an abusive father, and his daughter, who's a misunderstood girl who doesn't have a lot of friends. She befriends this monster. It's got those kind of universal monster Frankenstein kind of vibes. It's got beautiful, bittersweet, melancholy storytelling that is totally appropriate for Jeff Lemire and what he does, and the artwork is absolutely masterful. The writing, the dialogue, everything about it works so well. The mood, the atmosphere, the tone. Issue 1 was amazing. Issue 2 continued that momentum, but issue 3 actually takes it to another level, starts getting even a little bit more resonating with some of its themes, with some of its characters, with these relationships, and with these conflicts. Fishflies, issue number 3, a very solid pick of the week. Also from Image, we have The Deviant, issue number 1. I'm giving cover of the week to The Deviant, issue number 1 variant cover by Josh Hickson, because it's a die-cut cover. It's like Santa in a snow globe. I think it's pretty cool. This book is by James Tynion the fourth. I almost said the third. James Tynion the fourth, as well as Joshua Hickson on the art, Hassan Otsman El Howe on the lettering. This is a book about a killer Santa Claus. So it's a killer Santa Claus from the 70s, and they think that they captured who this killer Santa Claus is. But there's this one dude who's basically a stand-in for James Tynion. He's a dude, he's a comic book writer. He's researching his new book he wants to do about this. And there is something personally kind of attached to him to this murder spree that happened in the 70s. So he goes to visit the dude who was captured, and maybe not everything was exactly what everybody thought it was at the time. And now there's another killer Santa Claus on the loose. I love the artwork. I loved the tone and the atmosphere of this book. It's a horror comic. It's a Christmas horror comic, and it totally appropriates the exact tone that it needs to. It's somber, it's melancholy, but at the same time, it's very smart, it's insightful, and it's ruminating about certain thematic things that I absolutely loved. So I thought The Deviant, issue number 1, had a lot to say, and said it in the midst of a really cool, gnarly Christmas horror story. And yes, there's some gnarly bits in this. It kind of goes out there. James Tynion's been going ham lately, y'all. So The Deviant, issue number 1, I really liked it. It's a big book, $5.99, at least for this cover, but come on, y'all. You know that cover's worth it. I love a die-cut cover. Don't you? Look, Snow Globe Robbie. Anyway, Geiger is back with Ground Zero. This is the first of a 2-issue miniseries detailing the origin of Geiger. Now, we've already seen the origin of Geiger in the pages of the initial Geiger book. This is by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank as well, as the original Geiger series. but there's a little bit more involved. You actually get to find out who this dude actually was, what he was dealing with, what his family dynamic is like right before the tragedy that led to Geiger. So it's a really cool kind of look back, as well as having a story it's anchored and structured in a very interesting way, where there's the past story, and then I don't think it's a present story. I think it's a past story as well, but it takes place at a different time than the others. Two parallel stories going on here, y'all, is what I'm trying to say. Great artwork, a great solid story. Didn't hit me as much as the initial Geiger series did, but this was really solid, and I really appreciated the return to the world of Geiger. So that was pretty cool. Then we got Dutch issue number 0. This is from Joe Casey, Nathan Fox. This is, of course, the Chappy Up character Dutch, who you know from pages of Youngblood from back in the day. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but it feels to me like this was familiar. I think that this is a collected form of the Dutch short stories from the Image 30th Anniversary Anthology. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I do believe that's the case. But anyway, it's Joe Casey playing around with Dutch. All that extreme Image stuff happened in the 90s. It's 30 years later. He's aged. He's old. He's too old for this shit, and all that kind of stuff. But then, of course, his past comes back for him. Now, this is all set up for an issue 1 that's debuting in February of next year. I love this old school Image stuff. I love Joe Casey. I like the character of Dutch. This was a really solid issue. So if you missed out on those short stories and you want to get ready for the new Dutch series debuting next year, get this Dutch number 0. It's a really solid book. Then we got Big Game, issue number 5, an exercise conclusion to the giant Mark Millar crossover. He's crossed over every single one of his original creations, from Kick-Ass and the Kingsmen to the Magic Order to Empire, or Empress, not Empire, Empress, and even some other surprises that are thrown in. The artwork is great. It's a satisfying conclusion. It's got some nice surprises to it, but it also ends in a way that's not very surprising. That was kind of obvious from a few issues ago, and I even said here on this show, if they do that, that will weaken it a little bit. So the series has been weakened. A lot of its impact has been kind of pulled away here in the final issue, but like I said, there's still some really nice, entertaining surprises and setup for the future of Mark Millar's creations in the Millarverse. Miller World, Millarverse, whatever you want to call it. Big Game number 5, though, I had a lot of fun with it. But a lot of fake outs. We'll talk about that later. Something Epic is here with issue number 7. Szymon Kudranski doing a great job of just telling stories the way he wants to tell them. He's doing the art. He's doing the writing. Something Epic has been filled with brilliant ideas about creation and imagination and just what that represents to a person, and maybe not just to the world at large, but to that person's soul and how that can affect the world at large. This is a conclusion, I believe, to the first arc. It will be returning at some point next year, and I'm eager for it to return. It has been at times clunky with its dialogue, but it's starting to really iron some of that out. But it's the power of those concepts and the statements about creative energy and imagination and how that affects ourselves and how trauma's involved with it, but also how that kind of leaks outward. I loved this book. I thought it was great. I love the visuals, and I really think this story has got a lot to sink its teeth into. Then we've got The Cull here with issue number 4. I didn't really like issue number 1, didn't really like issue number 2. I really liked issue number 3. And issue 4 was okay. It wasn't as good as issue number 3, but I thought it was on par with 1 or 2. It's interesting enough. This group of friends, one of the friends' brother has gone missing or something. They go to try to find him. They go through this portal. Meanwhile, when they're in this other world, they gain these otherworldly powers. But then there's this giant monster that's come through the world that they're in now into the real world. And now they come back into the real world. They're dealing with those ramifications. A lot of talking, a lot of just going over the same territory. So it didn't really quite land with me. There is one more issue left of this, so might as well check it out. Hexagon Bridge is here with issue number 3. I vaguely have an understanding of what's going on in this book. This person's parents have gone missing through like some kind of teleportation type thing or something. They're lost between universes, something like that. They're trying to find them, but maintaining a cohesive narrative thread has been a struggle for me in this book. I love the artwork, I love the composition, the design of the page, everything about it, as far as the visuals go, is very striking, but it is kind of difficult to really enjoy it when I'm kind of lost, I feel like I'm missing something, and I'm sure a lot of that is just me. I read a lot of books, sometimes I can't retain everything, and the older I get, the more difficult it seems to be. The Hexagon Bridge has some interesting ideas, but nothing about the characters or those ideas is really standing out for me. What's standing out for me is the composition and the artwork. Then we got Spawn here with issue number 347. Cool Dan Panosian cover right there. A decent issue of Spawn. There's this war going on for the throne of hell, and most of this issue is Spawn's team realizing that he is there leading them through this battle for hell so that he can take over the throne. So there's a little bit of a conflict there with his team, and that's what most of the issue is for. The artwork is all right. It's not quite as exciting as some of the more recent Spawn issues, especially things like Gunslinger Spawn or even King Spawn has been, but it's still decent. $2.99 cardstock cover. Todd's calling the industry out. He's been doing it for years. Where are they? They're not listening. They're cowards. Then we got G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 301. That's right. Larry Hama is back to continue the G.I. Joe series that he started back in the 80s over at Marvel Comics. They brought it back. They re-brought it back. They brought it back again at IDW. That went to issue 300, and now they've re-brought it back again at Image, now that Skybound has the Hasbro license for G.I. Joe and Transformers. Now, do not be deceived, this is not in any way, shape, or form part of the Energon universe. This is a continuation of that ongoing story that Larry Hama has been telling for about 40 years at this point. So if you're a fan of the Real American Hero stuff, you definitely want to jump into this one. I read it, and it was alright. It was lost. I've never read any of those G.I. Joe comics except for the Silent issue, which I think is, a great comic. But Chris Mooningham is on the artwork, and the artwork in this book is freaking awesome. The energy was there. This feels like old school G.I. Joe, so if that's what you're after, you definitely want to check that out. And check this out. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 1, a facsimile version with the original script by Larry Hama reinstituted. Apparently there was some editorial change on a couple lines here and there in the original days. It's always bugged Larry Hama. When he's come back now to this title for Image, for Skybound, one of the things they wanted to do was to correct that mistake, reprint issue number 1 with all of his original dialogue and copy, and it's fine. Like, I read it. It was the first time I've ever read it. I enjoyed it. My favorite thing about it, it's printed on newsprint paper, so those colors do not come across too bold and garish and gaudy, but they feel exactly like they should have felt leaping off of the page back in 1980, whatever the hell it was. And it's just beautiful. I wish Marvel and DC would take a cue from this. This is how you do facsimiles. Put it on the original paper or as close. Actually, this is a better quality paper. This newsprint, the way that those colors come across, it all freaking works. When you do facsimiles, put it on paper as close to the original as possible so we get the true intent of those colors. Oh, and it should be obvious. That's the smell of the week because it's that classic newsprint, G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, number 1, facsimile. Let's jump over to Marvel. We got Star Wars Visions, the followers of Enkok. It's what it says. It's what it says. Anyway, this is Peach Momoko doing a one-shot silent Star Wars comic. The story is interesting. The storytelling is actually really solid. The artwork is really solid. I was kind of like, I can vibe with what's going on, but I don't really quite understand the significance. Are we supposed to know these characters? Is this all original creations? I have no idea, but I will tell you this. Peach Momoko not only can draw, she can tell a story. And she tells the story very well. The sequential storytelling in this book is really solid. The composition, the pace, and the flow of it. I really enjoyed this book. If you're a Star Wars fan or a Peach Momoko fan, definitely got to check that out. Superior Spider-Man number 1 is here. Wait a second. I thought we already had Superior Spider-Man issue number 1. No. We had a one-shot comic called Superior Spider-Man Returns issue number 1 that was before this that sets this up. So if you're just jumping in here, you might be a little bit lost. You have to read that Superior Spider-Man Returns. Now, Robbie, you ask, why would they possibly do a one-shot and then an issue number one instead of just having an issue number one continuing the series? Why? Because 2 issue number ones in a row give us an excuse to have higher priced comics. That's why. The issue itself is pretty solid. It's pretty good. It's got Spider-Boy in it. It's got a continuation of the Superior Spider-Man Returns, in which in that issue they kind of like, they do this thing that I don't typically like where they're like, oh, we never showed you this, but this happened, just to set up this character that's supposed to be a threat and badass. And it was interesting. It had a nice flow. Mark Bagley artwork. Not the strongest Mark Bagley artwork, but it gets the job done. And the script is pretty tight as well. Superior Spider-Man number one, pretty decent. Then we got Deadpool 7 Slaughters, issue number one. This is a one-shot comic, $10 one-shot comic. And what it is 7 Deadpool short stories by various Deadpool creators like Gail Simone, Cullen Bunn, Rob Liefeld. So if you're a super hardcore Deadpool fan, you definitely want to check this out. But if you're not a big hardcore Deadpool fan, you can skip out on this one because all the stories are kind of silly. They don't really have any lasting impact, I don't think. But one thing I do think is super cool, I never in my life thought I would see Frank Miller draw Deadpool, and I'm actually digging it. I'm really digging this Frank Miller Deadpool cover, so there you go. Daredevil is here with issue number 3. It's an alright issue of Daredevil. I've been liking this new run, but in this one, we get our first artist swap, and it's not just like a different artist with a different style taking over the book all of a sudden. It's a different artist with a different style bouncing back and forth from page to page with Aaron Cutter, who is the artist of this book. And Aaron Cutter's artwork is amazing, but it is a way different style than the guest artist on this book. So it goes from these like clean lines and very spacious panels to something that feels a bit more claustrophobic, a little bit more noodly, a little bit more darker, and it's just like, it's throwing off the whole balance of the book. And also, it doesn't really feel like much happens in this issue until you get to the end, and then there's a reveal that's kind of cool. Man, I just wish Marvel could keep the art consistent on the Daredevil book, because the artist's vision on Daredevil is a very important thing for the book itself, and it just throws me off when the styles change so drastically from page to page with no distinguishable method or reasoning within the structure of the story. Then we got Blade here with issue number 5. This is wrapping up the first arc of what has been a great Blade book. The first couple issues, I had some criticisms with the coloring by Jordi Belair. Just kind of felt murky and a little bit overly dark. That's been really ironed out since issue number 3, and the book's been great because Brian Edward Hill understands this character, understands how to make it work, how to make it reflect enough from the classic old school Tomb of Dracula stuff as well as from the Wesley Snipes movie. I am digging this Blade run. Blade is going up against some heavy stuff. He's having to deal with some really heavy issues as a result of that, but it's been a really fun book, and I'm excited to see this flourish and develop as the story goes. Spine-Tingling Spider-Man is here with issue number 2. Juan Ferreira on the artwork. It is absolutely amazing. This is a horror-themed Spider-Man book. It's Spider-Man in a horror comic, and it's not really holding much back, dude. The artwork by Juan Ferreira is awesome. The script by Saladin Ahmed is really sparse, but it has a nice flow to it. It allows the horrific imagery to really kind of carry the brunt of the experience of this book, and I think that works exceptionally well. I'm a huge fan of Ferreira, and I like horror, and I like comic books and superheroes, so this book is 100% for me, and I'm here for it. So there you go. Fantastic Four number 13 is here. This almost got cover of the week. That die-cut cover is so smooth, though, but look at that. It's Doctor Doom writing a Doctor Doom T-Rex. That's right, there's another reality out there where all the Marvel superheroes are dinosaurs. Yeah, it's like Jurassic League, but let's do it with the Fantastic Four, right? That's fine, but Doctor Doom finds out that his counterpart in that world is a T-Rex, who is straight up a T-Rex wearing Doctor Doom armor, who acts just like Doctor Doom. So they team up. Fantastic Four are trying to stop them. It's a silly book. It's a silly issue. It doesn't really completely wow me, but man, one thing I do hate about this book, this artist, and it's Saban Coelho, he draws no neck on the thing. It's like a bobblehead looking thing. It's so freaking weird and off-putting, and the coloring is way too garish in this book. Can we just say that? That being said, that cover's awesome. The idea of a Doctor Doom T-Rex, I mean, that's pretty cool. Cap Wolf and the Howling Commandos, issue number 2. Been a while since we had issue number 1 of this, but this is a story that takes place in World War II. These Nazis have gotten this, like, demon witch or something to help them out. She's controlling the power of the moon, and she's turning people into werewolves. So you get Nazi werewolves versus Captain America, and in the first issue, they bite him, and he becomes Cap Wolf. This book is exactly what it's trying to be. It's not reaching further than just being a silly war comic about Captain America turning into a werewolf, and he's with the Howling Commandos. Get it? Howling Commandos. It's clever, it's fun, but it's not the greatest, and it's not the worst. It's kind of like, you know, middle of the road, which is decent enough, I guess, for Marvel nowadays. Red Goblin is here with issue number 10. This is the final issue of Red Goblin, and am I surprised that I made it 10 issues all the way through a book about Normie Osborn being bonded with a symbiote and becoming the Red Goblin? It seems like the dumbest idea. Like, who even cares about this 12-year-old grandson of Norman Osborn getting a symbiote? It just seems silly and stupid, but writer Alex Packnadell's actually made it a really interesting and nuanced and complicated look at the legacy of evil within. Like when your parents are pieces of shit and you feel like maybe you are. Or something happened to you when you were a kid, or something happened to you at some point in your life and you can't really get over it and you feel like, you know, self-destructive and you hate yourself over it. Like, these are the kind of things, like that legacy of evil and self-loathing is really been explored in the pages of Red Goblin, which should be a dumb, silly book, but in the capable hands of Alex Packnadell, it's become a really solid, introspective, and complex book that I absolutely love. Children of the Vault is here with issue number 4. Dennis Camp doing a great job of taking Bishop, taking Cable, taking everything about their stories before, their conflicts, what brings them together, what drives them apart, and throwing that into this new Fall of X era, whatever. I'm not reading any of those X-Men books. It does not matter. I still love this. I love the concept of the city and the vault. I love the big ideas that Dennis Camp is playing with here, and his characterization of Nathan and Lucas are absolutely spot on and so much fun. I want more work from Dennis Camp. Over at Marvel, at DC, Indie, whatever it takes, give us more Dennis Camp work, because I will read it every single time. Let's jump over to DC. And from DC, we have The Outsiders, issue number 1. This is the first part of a new 12-issue series that is a new Outsiders team, but it is definitely more so a sequel of sorts to Planetary. Planetary is one of my favorite comic books of all time. Warren Ellis, John Cassaday, and just a absolutely brilliant book. Is about this team of 3 people, part of this organization. They're trying to discover the secret history of the world, and that secret history is the fiction of the world, which actually really happened, right? Planetary is amazing. If you've never read it, I cannot recommend a book higher than Planetary. It's one of my favorite comic books, period. This is not just a spiritual successor to Planetary, it is a sequel to Planetary of sorts, but it's a new iteration of that kind of idea, calling themselves the Outsiders, but it's Batwoman, it's Luke Fox, Batwing, and a new iteration of the Drummer. It is firmly set in the DC universe. How does it connect to Planetary and the Authority from the Warren Ellis days? It does. It's there. Trust me. If you liked those books and loved them even like I did, you definitely owe it to yourself to read this book. It was a really great structured first issue that introduced the concept, and even if you've never read Planetary, I think you still might enjoy this, but you're definitely going to get more punch out of it if you are a fan of Planetary like I am. Speed Force number 1 is here. It's an okay book. It kind of goes right along with what Cy Spurrier and Mike Diodato are doing in the pages of Flash, but it's not essential to that. It's basically like, yo, while Wally's dealing with this, here's what Wallace West and the Flash from China are dealing with, right? It's a different kind of story. The artwork is cool and kind of kinetic. It's got a great sense of motion and movement, but it doesn't really do anything to distinguish itself out of just a spin-off of a spin-off. And it's actually a spin-off of a main title, but it's not so firmly connected that it feels essential. It just kind of feels like a usage of these characters or just to get some more bang for your buck. I don't know. I'm just gonna... If you're the most hardcore Flash fan and you gotta have everything Flash-centric, get this book. Otherwise, I think it's pretty skippable. Then we got Detective Comics here with 1077. Rom V, big, tragic, gothic, epic, operatic Batman story. Jason Sean Alexander on the artwork. Batman has been captured. Catwoman has to put a team together to go after him, pull off the heist to save Batman from himself. Have we seen it before? Yes, but have we seen it with such precision, such great dark artwork, perfect spotting of blacks, an amazing sense of the operatic notions of where this book is supposed to go and what it's supposed to be? No. What Rom V and company, because he's been doing a lot of artists on there, he's been using a lot of artists, it's just been exceptional. It's been amazing, and I cannot wait actually to sit back right now and reread every issue leading up to this. These last couple of issues have just gotten better and better and better. Rom knows what he's doing on tech, and I'm all here for it. Then we got Batman and Robin issue number 3 from Joshua Williamson. Simone DeMeo. This is the best issue of this Batman and Robin series yet. It's really finding its footing. I liked issue number 1 and 2, but 3 really kind of elevates it a little bit. The artwork is big, it's bombastic, it's kinetic, the colors are popping, the story's becoming a little bit more clear and way more engaging. There's a new villain called Shush. Is she connected to Hush? I don't know. Batman doesn't know. Damian doesn't know. Let's all find out together. That's the promise of Batman and Robin. I really like the focus in on their relationship, on the idea that Batman, Bruce, is trying to get Damian to go to high school. Damian's like, nah, boy, man, we gotta solve this case. Hey, Damian ain't going to high school. Anyway, Batman and Robin number 3, really like that. Green Lantern issue number 5 keeps getting better and better. Jeremy Adams has already proven he can deliver a really good, solid, consistent superhero run. He just did that with The Flash. But now with Green Lantern, it's like he's got that confidence in, and he's just killing it. The artwork by Hermonico is great too, and they're playing with the emotional spectrum. A lot of people like to play around with the emotional spectrum. Ever since Jeff Johns created that stuff during the, Sinestro Corps War and the Blackest Night and all that kind of stuff, people like to play with it. They want to create their own new rings and this kind of stuff. Jeremy Adams isn't doing that, but he's playing with that emotional spectrum in a very interesting, cool way. Sinestro's usage is absolutely fire in this book. I love it. I thought it was great. There's a backup story. It's okay. Wesley Dodds Sandman issue number 2. Way better than issue number 1. I was not completely sold on issue number 1, but I came back for 2, and I'm glad I did. This is set in the golden age of DC, the new golden age, if you will. Part of an initiative where they're spotlighting some of these original golden age heroes like Jay Garrick Flash, Alan Scott Green Lantern, Wesley Dodds Sandman. It's got a little bit of a darker approach, a little bit more gnarly. The Riley Rossmo artwork absolutely works for it here, and basically the idea is that Wesley Dodds is a pacifist in a way. He's trying to figure out a way to win wars without killing people by developing poison gases, right? That will just knock people out, put them to sleep, right? And that's kind of what he does as a vigilante on the street. But he's actually also developed way more lethal gases that have now gotten into the wrong hands, and there's like an anti-Sandman out there, and I am here for it. I love that design, loved how this issue ended, so I thought it was pretty solid. World's Finest Teen Titans is here with issue number 5, the penultimate series of this year 1 approach to the Teen Titans. Written by Mark Waid, he understands these characters, and I really like how he's been able to reinterpret the early years of the Teen Titans, make it compelling, make it interesting, and those characters and how they're playing off of each other. It is absolutely top-notch. All of the plans, though, all of the little seeds that have been sown in issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 erupt here in issue number 5 to hopefully promise a really satisfying conclusion when this story wraps up with issue number 6. Speaking of wrapping up a story, The Vigil is here with issue number 6. This wraps up Rom V's The Vigil. It is a spiritual successor to things like Planetary. Outsiders is definitely a successor of Planetary. This one is more thematically a successor, and it was absolutely well crafted, perfectly told, and I love this ending. After the crazy revelations of the last issue, how does the team band back together when it feels like they should all be torn apart? I absolutely love this conclusion, and even more so, love the promise that this book will continue in some form or fashion. From Boom Studios, we have Lotus Land, issue number 1. This is from Darcy Van Polgeest, who wrote one of my favorite comic books a few years ago called Little Bird. So I definitely wanted to check this one out, and it was a really solid book. It's set in Canada. It's like in the 2600s or something like that, so it's in the future. It seems like there's this corporation running this city. They got this like fake tree. I don't know. There's somebody. Some of the details of the plot were a little bit murky. It's not quite clear yet, but what was clear was the pace and the sincerity of this issue. It definitely has a sincere approach to the story, to the humans in the story, to the world that's being built. The world itself is not fully clear, but the characters and their motivations actually are. The dialogue is great and it's sharp, and the pacing of it is really top notch. I thought this was a great book. I'm just eager to know more about this world and what exactly is going on. But the basic premise is that this dude who said, you know what, I'm too old for this shit, I'm gone. Something happens, they have to get that dude to come back into the city, and he doesn't want to be there, and then there's a kid, and there's a thing at the end where you're like, what's going on with that? So I really appreciated what was going on there, but the artwork is really solid too, and the artist is Ko Felipe. Absolutely cool, futuristic, sci-fi, but like I said, very earnest and human, and that's what I come to expect from Darcy Van Polgees. We got the Animal Pound Ashcan. So this is not the first full issue of Animal Pound, which is a new Tom King book from Boom Studios. It's a reimagining of Animal Farm, but at a pound. And it's interesting enough. It's all right. So you get the first several pages. You get the black and white. It's nice to see Peter Gross's artwork in black and white because it's actually really well done. But then you get this thing in the back where Tom King's explaining what the book is. And I'm just going to quote something as to why this book does not excite me very much. Okay, here we go. Animal Pound is an updating of Orwell's masterpiece. It is a series to be put in the hands of every reader in the country, a book that will be assigned in classrooms and inspire essays and interpretations. This is a series to cause conversation, to be in every bookstore and every comic store for thousands of people to argue over and to love. But most of this is a series that will talk about our time as Orwell talked about his. Does that not sound insufferable to anybody else? You are straight up saying, my book is going to be so important, it's going to be necessary to be taught and to inspire conversation. Get the fuck out of here, Tom King. God, just make a good comic. I'm going to make the greatest Wonder Woman story ever. Nobody's ever done it. I will do it. Nobody's ever made Animal Farm relevant today, but I will do it. God, that really irks me. Then we got the Ministry of Compliance issue number 1 from IDW. This is a new John Ridley book. It's described as a bloody sci-fi epic, and it's bloody, but it didn't really do much for me. It's $5.99. There's a lot of pages to it, a lot of content, but just not a whole lot of excitement. There's like this other race from another world. They're on Earth trying to, I don't know, take it over in some kind of way. It's a little bit unclear. It just didn't really quite get into it. There's this chick who runs the Ministry of Compliance. All these other ministries are like working together, but now there's something going on where like people are trying to overthrow the leader and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a twist at the end, and it's decent enough. The dialogue is fine enough, but it just didn't really do anything to separate itself out from the rest of the pack this week. It didn't do anything to really fully engage me. Didn't really have anything that was ultra compelling for me. So Ministry of Compliance, I will not comply probably. Probably won't be back for that one. The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, issue number 5. This book has been great. Like at first I thought it was okay, but as this series progressed, I absolutely loved it. It's about these group of kids, teenagers, if you will. One of them has died. One of them who was a werewolf. They are all like modern versions of classic monsters. Like there's like Christopher Chaos is like a mad scientist, like a Dr. Frankenstein. Adam Frankenstein's actually in it. This kid's a vampire. This woman controls ghosts or something like that. But man, I love this book. There's something about it. I love the references to the old school classic monsters. I love the coloring. I love the intensity of the book. I love the sincere earnestness within the characters' lives and their voices. So Christopher Chaos has really been winning me over. The Man from Maybe, issue number 2. This is a new one from Oni Press. Issue number 1 was weird and cool. Issue number 2 is just the same. Written by Jordan Thomas with artwork by Shaky Kane. This is the kind of stuff I like. It's weird, it's quirky, it may not appeal to everybody, but I love it. It's a nice, giant sci-fi space western with a lot of cool ideas, a lot of cool characters, action, ridiculousness, absurdity, and heart. I actually really like this book. 2 issues in, it's pretty solid. Crusader is here with issue number 3. This is the penultimate issue of the Mad Cave series, which is about a crusader during the Crusades who winds up through a portal into another world that has like goblins and orcs and monsters and stuff like that. But it's also like an exploration on faith and war and violence and how it all relates, right? And he comes into this world and he's viewed like, bro, you are a killer. And he's like, no, I'm just killing evil things. But you don't know this world. This is different. You don't belong here. There's this really cool stuff. I love the artwork. It's from Matt Emmons, who is a super cool dude. I've met him a couple of times this year. He's done some really cool indie work. You can find him at, oh damn, what's his, Secondhand Comics, I think is what it's called, maybe? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But I like the book. I like the artwork. It's got a cool, interesting, quirky style. But I also like the flow of the story. Rumpus Room is here with issue number 3. It's Mark Russell doing what Mark Russell does, which is a thinly veiled satire of modern society, of the haves and the have-nots, and why some people just buckle down and let the rich just step all over us. Because this is about a rich dude who, when somebody disagrees with him, he sends them down to his rumpus room where he's just holding a bunch of people prisoner, but because he's giving them food, because he gives them the illusion of choice, but every once in a while they get to vote on who's going to get killed or something like that, they have divided themselves into the haves and have-nots, even in the midst of captivity. So it's a story that's exploring the theme of captives feeling like they're free even though they're in captivity. So it's kind of like a Stockholm Syndrome type thing, but also really related to like class themes, right? So I really like the book. Rumpus Room, 3 issues in. It's quirky, it's funny, but it's also saying something, and it's saying something in that very specific Mark Russell kind of way. Space Outlaws is here, issue number 2. This is from Marco Fontanelli, who did the Pentagram of Horror. The artwork in this book is insane. I did not get a chance to read the first one when it first released, but I have since read it and I like it. But just like Pentagram of Horror, it's the art that really appeals to me. The use of color, the striking gnarliness of some of this stuff. What happens in this book? I don't know. There's like a cowboy running around. He's like a monster. It's just freaking awesome artwork that I absolutely adore and love. It's violent. It's crazy. It's sci-fi. It's horror. It's Western. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, and graphic novel-wise, here's what we got. Big deal. Ice Cream Man, the Sunday edition, book 2 is here. A beautiful hardcover edition collecting Ice Cream Man 13 through 24. So the first Sunday edition had the first 12 issues. This has the next 12 issues. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous edition of this book. It is beautiful. It opens nice. The trade dress, everything about it freaking rocks. It has all the covers in it. It's a little bit oversized, and Ice Cream Man just happens to be one of the best comic books of the modern era. That smells really good. Holy crap. This book smells awesome. The book itself is awesome. And now we got the second hardcover edition. Also, we got the Eerie Archives, Volume 2. Yes, Volume 2 from Eerie. Dark Horse has been reprinting the Eerie and Creepy Archives in cheap paperback forms, reprinting that beautiful artwork from classic creators back in the day like Frank Frazetta, like Steve Ditko, Gene Colan, Gray Morrow, Neil Adams, Johnny Craig. I mean, come on. If you like classic, cool EC horror, no reason why you don't like the Warren stuff as well. Eerie Archives Volume 2. And this isn't really comics, but I thought this was super cool and I had to pick one up. But this is out this week. If your shop doesn't have it, they should be able to order it from some of their distributors. This is Lego Space. This is a beautiful hardcover from Dark Horse Comics that is straight up a history and just a toy-by-toy exploration of all of the Lego Space toys from 1978 to 1992. And yes, in the 80s, when I was a kid, I loved these toys. Now, there's always been a bit inside of me where I would absolutely love to have all of these again. I don't have the room, nor do I have the money, nor do I have the time. But what I do have the time, money, and resources for is to get this awesome hardcover that's got them all in there. And it goes all the way up into the 90s with some of the newer stuff, the history, a lot of cool, interesting details. I cannot wait to dive into this book. A friend of mine had that. I wanted it so bad. Anyway, How cool is that? So let's recap. Lego Space hardcover, super cool. Eerie Archives trade paperback edition out now. Ice Cream Man Sunday edition volume 2. There you go. Space Outlaws, brilliant artwork, really cool gnarly stuff there. Rumpus Room, Mark Russell Satire Gold is what that is. Crusader, really nice flow, really cool artwork, really cool thematic material. The Man from Maybe, absurd, weird, and just right up my alley. Then we get Christopher Chaos, a book that just keeps getting better and better and just keeps gripping me every single time. Ministry of Compliance was a little dull, didn't really quite get into it. Animal Pound sounds like it's going to be insufferable. Lotus Land #1, I want to know more about this world and certain characters' motivations, but it felt very real and sincere. All right, then we got The Vigil, an excellent conclusion to Ron V's The Vigil. World's Finest Teen Titans setting up a really, hopefully, fantastic finale there. Wesley Dodd's Sandman, issue #2, improving on the momentum from issue #1. Green Lantern #5, Jeremy Adams is killing it. Batman and Robin #3, best issue of that series yet. Detective Comics, though, Rom's Detective just keeps getting better and better. Speed Force, though, is very skippable. Outsiders is perfect if you read Planetary. Even if you haven't, I encourage you to check it out. Children of the Vault, the only X-Men book worth its salt. Red Goblin, I can't believe I love this book for 10 issues, but it's written by Alex Pagnadell, so that should be no surprise. Cap Wolf is exactly what you expect it to be. Captain America fighting werewolf zombies as a werewolf. Fantastic Four involves a Doctor Doom T-Rex. And that is the best part of the issue, the fact that there's a Doctor Doom T-Rex. Spine-Tingling Spider-Man horror lens on Spider-Man, and it works. Blade is really solid right now. I really like that book. Daredevil, inconsistency in the artwork really threw me off this issue. Deadpool 7 Slaughters, Frank Miller cover's awesome, but if you're only the most hardcore Deadpool fans, probably want to check that out. Superior Spider-Man #1 wasn't bad. It was actually pretty cool, pretty tight, pretty fun. Star Wars Visions, great art and storytelling from Peach Momoko, though I'm still a little bit like, well, all right, it's great, but like, I don't know, is that leading to something? I don't know. Anyway, G.I. Joe, Facsimile Edition, Smell of the Week, beautiful representation of this book on newsprint so that the colors actually ring true. G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, issue 301. Larry Hama is back with a vengeance. Spawn is here. It's an okay issue of Spawn. Hexagon Bridge, losing the plot, really liking the art. That's my favorite thing, actually. The Cull, one more issue to go. Might as well stick it out. Something Epic wraps up its first arc in a very fascinating way. Excited to see the ideas that develop out of that. Big Game has some big cheats in its final issue, but at the same time, it was kind of thrilling and exciting. Dutch #0. Get ready for Joe Casey on Dutch coming next year. My name's Dutch. Stick around. Geiger, Ground Zero, that's an origin story for Geiger. Cover of the week goes to that die-cut cover for The Deviant. Christmas Horror from James Tynan, Josh Hickson, and Hassan Osman El Hal. But the pick of the week is Fishflies #3 because Jeff Lemire knows how to tell a story. He knows how to write dialogue. He knows how to pace it. He knows how to draw it. He knows how to color it. He knows how to make a comic. He's one of the best in the industry for a reason. So there you go. That's what I read. That's what I dug. That's what I'm thinking. What are you reading? What are you digging? What are you thinking? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Can you hear those people running around downstairs? I don't know if that's coming through. Let's just be quiet. Of course they... Run some more. My new downstairs neighbors suck. Just straight up suck. They are not the pick of the week. Anyway, thank you. Please like, share, subscribe. Join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. They're distracting me now. My neighbors suck. This is the first time this has ever happened to me here. I'm depressed. No, I'm not. I just read some awesome comics. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station. Pop, pop. Boom.